The Toronto Blue Jays made a really surprising decision yesterday by DFAing Paul DeJong, and it already paid dividends for them. Davis Schneider, who would have been sent down, hit a huge home run in yesterday's ball game, so that already paid off for the Blue Jays. And manager John Schneider, he spoke out about Alek Manoah, and he may be a lot further from the big leagues than we have originally thought. So we'll break that down and much more on this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. And as we speak today, the Blue Jays are still on the outside looking in when it comes to the playoff picture, but they picked up a huge win yesterday against the Cincinnati Reds. It was looking great at the beginning there. They started to scratch some runs early on, and then that Little League home run by Elly De La Cruz happened, and we thought, here we go again. This is same old Blue Jays. They're going to blow this. And then Davis Schneider hit that huge home run, and they didn't really string much together after that, but they ended up victorious. Jordan Hicks looked good. Jordan Romano looked good after an initial scare, but I was very happy with what I saw yesterday, Nick. And some news came out today that, maybe we were not expecting to have to talk about a couple of days ago.
Yeah, and David Schneider was kind of the unsung hero yesterday, coming off of, the day that everyone thought, and us included, that he was going to be the guy who got DFA'd. So before we get to the video, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We're on the road to 8,000. And let's just get into it. The Jays make a pretty shocking move, and not shocking in the sense that Paul DeJong was playing well or that he was, a phenomenal player for the Blue Jays, but shocking in the sense of the guy they acquired just a couple weeks ago on August 1st got DFA'd by Ross Atkins. Now, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we really didn't give up too much to get him, but still, he's a veteran guy. He's 30 years old. He's had some great years. He was an all-star. He's a great glove, and they decide to keep Davis Schneider up as well as Santiago Espinal up by DFAing Paul DeJong after Bo Bichette returned from the 10-day injured list and was active yesterday and went 1 for 5 with a hit. But Peter, Paul DeJong, he is no longer a Blue Jay. I don't think he'll clear waivers just because of his, elite glove. And again, he had 13 home runs, had around a 92 OPS plus coming into the Blue Jays, and then he strung together 3 hits in 40, or maybe even less than that, in 44 at-bats, and was just a disaster. Brad Hand, similar situation, not as, catastrophic, but he was supposed to be a stopgap, but ultimately, maybe would have been better off playing Espinal even there for the, 44 at-bats.
It didn't work out, Nick, but stuff like that happens all the time. And I don't want to even remotely compare it to the Brad Hand situation because Brad Hand actually cost the Blue Jays that 2021 season. Paul DeJong, as bad as he was, as unproductive as he was, can't say he cost the Blue Jays any games. He wasn't the sole reason as to why they were losing out there. He didn't help, obviously, with a minus 81 WRC plus. I didn't even know that was possible before I saw the stat. He didn't help, obviously, and it just didn't work out. And I have a feeling he's going to go somewhere else and do his thing because he is a good player. He's a pro. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. And I wish him all the best. Luckily, the Jays got Bo Bichette back now, and luckily they kept Davis Schneider. He was struggling a little bit there, but he rewarded the Jays with their leap of faith because he hit that huge home run yesterday, and he's a kid that seems very motivated to be up in the big leagues, and I want to see him stay there. Even if it's partial playing time, it's still better than someone who's just not offering anything in that batter's box. So I was happy to see him stay up. I wish Paul DeJong all the best. And let's stop ragging on the guy. I don't think he cost the Blue Jays their season. Their destiny is in front of them. They just got to start playing better, and it continues today against Cincinnati Reds.
Yeah, and David Schneider, obviously, fastballs, especially, high fastballs has been his weakness lately. But again, he's just new to the big leagues. He's going to adjust to those things. You can make comparisons to other guys. But I agree. Paul DeJong didn't work out with the Blue Jays. Seemed like a very good guy, very good player. And I'm a little bit, the reason I was so shocked is I just didn't think that Ross Atkins would cut loose a guy he just traded for 2 weeks ago. But he did, and like Ben Nicholson-Smith said here, the move made sense at the time. He just didn't hit it all, and it ended up backfiring. Now Espinal resumes the role as the backup shortstop, which, between Espinal and Paul DeJong, I'm not even sure who I'd rather have, but I understand why they went with Santiago Espinal. He also has options, so it makes much more sense. And again, we made a video a couple days ago, kind of preluding the fact that David Schneider would get sent down, and we think it was a bad move, and we didn't even allude to the fact that DeJong had the chance of being DFA. We kind of just assumed it was between maybe Schneider and Espinal, but overall, the right move was made for, I think, both the player and the obviously the
Mhm.
organization, keeping up Davis Schneider and putting down Paul DeYoung, and I'm sure he'll find somewhere else to play and have some sort of role going forward, whether that's a playoff push or maybe an Oakland A's situation. But let us know what your thoughts are on that, and let's get into the next topic now, which is John Schneider speaks out on Alek Manoah, and this was very, very interesting. Peter, I don't know how you feel about this whole situation. The Manoah situation's kind of been a mess as a whole, and these comments kind of came out of nowhere yesterday. John Schneider, I guess, in a media briefing following Bo Bichette's return, and a lot of comments to get into. We'll go one at a time, and Pete, I'll get your initial thoughts with the first comment here. And there's tons of comments. We'll start with this one. This is kind of the biggest hitter here. Alek Manoah, who was optioned on August 11th, is still in Toronto, and the Blue Jays are, quote, trying to figure out the right time physically in terms of delivery and things like that for when he'll start to pitch in AAA Buffalo. And I'll get into a couple of more screenshots now which reveal the timeline a bit more. But Peter, reading these comments, are you surprised? Are you a bit concerned? Or do you think that Manoah might not even come up in September?
Yeah, well, as it stands right now, he's not really a good option to bring up in September, especially now when you're chasing a playoff spot. I think Jay Jackson is going to be the guy to come up when the rosters do expand. Chad Green is on his way back, and you don't want to mess with that bullpen, what they got going right now. You don't want to have to send down Henderson Cabrera. You don't want to have to get rid of Bowden Francis either. So you want to keep that continuity in the bullpen. You don't want to mess with it. And Alek Manoah is just not ready. And we said it the first time that he got sent down. Keep him there until he's fully ready. And he came back. He had a couple of decent starts, one really good start against the Tigers, but I can't say he looked like his old self. You know, he wasn't ready to return to the major league level yet. And the Blue Jays rushed him out of necessity because they don't have any minor league depth when it comes to starting pitching. They didn't have any options. So they had no choice. They had to bring him back and further ruined his confidence. And now I think it's a issue that goes deeper than just on the baseball field. I think his mental is just not where it needs to be right now. I don't think he's ready to even play baseball at this point. And Manoah, as bad as he's been, he's a long-term project and he's a part of this team. So they got to take very good care of him and they got to make sure that they take the right steps for his development because you still got him under control until 2028. So you got to figure that aspect out if you're the Blue Jays. And they should have never called him up. It was a huge mistake. We said it, Nick. We were very critical of them calling him up that early. And look, it backfired. He didn't pitch well when he got back. And now the organization just looks even worse because he's not even close to the majors yet.
Yeah, and I think that, ultimately they definitely called him up too early, but he did have some positive signs, and he definitely pitched better since returning, or when he returned compared to the start, but it would have just been better for him to continue to work that out in the minors. But again, it's a very tough situation because we were running out of four-man rotation, and that wasn't really sustainable with the bullpen, so maybe, some trade-offs there. But some more comments. Ask Schneider if this is a shorter version of earlier this season. In Dunedin, when Manoah worked on things to the side. He said, yes, it's kind of similar. Now, this is an interesting point. He said, that said, Manoah's next in line if the Blue Jays need an arm. This is more interesting than I expected. Now, I assume this means if the Jays have a starter that goes down with a severe injury or something like that, or a 10-day IL stint, that he will be the next starter up. That makes some sense because the other options aren't really there. But I honestly kind of still doubt that a little bit. I don't know if they're going to call him up again. Maybe for one spot start here and there, but I don't think he's going to take a roster spot on the team. And then finally, like I said earlier, with the trying to figure out things physically with the delivery, and we don't even know when he's going to start pitching in AAA Buffalo, but it's interesting. Maybe if, one of the starters get hurt, hopefully not because they're all pitching very, very well. But maybe if someone needs a rest day, you can call him up for a game and see how he's going. But I don't think that's in the near plans, especially because he's not even pitching in AAA right now. Maybe down the line in September, if someone gets hurt, he goes up for a couple starts. And I'm fine with that. What I'm not fine with is Alek Manoah getting called up anymore during the season.
Yeah, and we've been saying this. We've been very constant with this take, Nick. It's going to take a whole offseason for him to get back to who he used to be. And I think he will. I think he will get back to that. He got complacent with his success. I don't know if he took the offseason very seriously. Got the world handed to him as a 24-year-old and finished third in Cy Young voting. That can get to your head. And he worked very hard to where he got to be where he got there. But he's got to get back to that semblance of his old self, and I think he will. It'll take a whole offseason to overhaul that, but don't bring him back to the big leagues because he just won't contribute. He won't be a valuable part of your team this season, but next year he's probably going to be one of your top starters, maybe your second, third starter. and that's what he's going to be for the rest of his career. So don't rush him. Make sure he's right, and then you bring him back.
Yeah, I think they're not going to rush him anymore throughout this season. They definitely rushed him a little bit earlier, but again, it was out of necessity, and he did pitch slightly better. His slider looked better, but take the positives that he got from the major leagues. At least he had a couple of good starts in his return, as opposed to the start of the season where he really had no good starts aside from one earlier in the year. But overall, it was a very interesting day yesterday, and the Blue Jays hope to continue their success today against the Cincinnati Reds, a team that, I'm not going to lie, it's very, very fun to watch. It's a little bit stressful as a Blue Jays fan, the way that they play baseball with Ellie De La Cruz. And maybe, when he's hitting, stick Kevin Biggio back in the infield instead of the outfield. But that'll wrap up the video. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.